Brittany Cohen, and I'm doing the mayoral interviews for the candidates of the mayor race in Pana. This is Tommy Jeffers, and I have about 17 questions from the public. None of these are really from me. Most of them, all of them are from the public. So we will start with, what is your name?
My name's Tommy Neal Jeffers.
And where are you from?
I am from Upper East Tennessee originally, but I moved to Pana about 25 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
And can you name one thing you want people to know about you?
I'm just a regular guy. I'm a school teacher and family man.
Okay, now we're getting to the questions from the city citizens of Pana. What do you consider the top 3 issues facing our city? How do you plan to address and resolve them? Can you outline your strengths, specific actions, timelines for tracking these challenges?
Well, I think the main issues that are going on in Pana is simply they revolve around infrastructure, which means everything from roads to water. I think that's probably the main issue that's on a lot of people's mind. I also think that it's pretty important that we create economic possibilities for people, bringing in new businesses, new opportunities, things for, I want to see things done for our kids that they can be involved in. And honestly, the third top issue, I think, is the perception that sometimes people have outside of Pana of Pana. I want to see that be a much more positive perception.
Okay.
As far as timelines, it's going to depend on a lot of factors, a lot of that being money, and a lot of that being how we can get the community together, which is what I want to focus on, is bringing the community together to try to achieve some of these goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that having an open door policy and a lot of transparency is the best way to go.
Okay. Yeah, and sorry, anything further?
No, I think that takes care of it.
Okay. Question 2, can you share your plan for addressing the issue of unfulfilled promises related to the city's acquisition and distribution of buildings? How do you intend to attract and support businesses effectively to ensure properties are utilized?
Okay, the unfulfilled promises about buildings. I know there's been a lot of people pretty upset about buildings being promised to become something and then that not happening. Everything from coffee shops to other things that we've dealt with. The thing about that is you have to really work hard to get people to be interested in a small town in America, especially in a town like Pana, where we're kind of like shrinking a little bit and we want to try to grow if we can. And so in order to get businesses here, I think the key will be to try to focus on specialty clients. Like I do know that businesses like the disc golf place and the bicycle shop and things like that, they're very niche, they're very special. And I think things like that might be something that we can look into as far as bring positive elements to the town. It's harder to do that in a small town, especially where our downtown is, because it doesn't get a lot of traffic, like say the highway might. And so we're really going to have to go with some things that might be specialty where people could be attracted to that. As far as getting people to come here, there's always things that we can do. We can help with TIF, where there's tax incentives, all kinds of things that we can do to try to attract individuals. And it will be a lot of work. What I want to also do is reach out to the community and see if people that are from Pana, that are actually living here, would be interested in doing something. Before I outsource to people far away, I'd rather give opportunities to our people here.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think is best for small town America.
Okay. Question 3 is, given the city has passed ordinances to allow dispensaries, how do you plan to approach attracting and establishing a dispensary and other cannabis industries? I'm putting that one in there.
Okay.
In our town, what steps will you take to ensure this initiative is successful and beneficial for the community?
Okay, now this is a highly controversial and complex question. The council has voted to pursue this sort of thing, and I know that we've already looked into it a little bit and it didn't come to fruition. My plan as mayor would be, because that is something that the council wanted to pursue, if they're continuing to support that, my job would be to try to look at as many different possibilities as we could find. Not just look at one particular company, but look at multiple companies to try to attract somebody that might be here in Pana. And so if we get something like a dispensary here, I'm sure that's going to be very beneficial for the tax base. It usually is for small towns. However, if people are purchasing there, I do know that the tax rate is much higher for those folks. My only concern with it is I want to make sure that the town understands that this is more medically oriented, and even if it's for recreational use, that there's a benefit to it because of safety and other such things, with all the problems that there are with different types of drugs that people might lace something with. And we want people to feel safe. You know, there's a whole lot of things that go into these things. They have to be vetted for safety, security, make sure that they're in a proper location. There's lots of stuff that people have to go through to set up this type of distribution center. And also, like your smaller shops, if people were to set up something like that, outside of that, there's also a lot of government enforced rules that people have to follow. And so the thing about it is that we would have to work with the community in an open way to where the community would know that it's not something that they have to worry about when it comes to safety or security. I think that's really important to a lot of people. But as far as trying to get it here, the way to get it here is not to put all your eggs in one basket. It's to look in a variety of places to see what we can find that might be willing to come here, and then go from there.
Okay. What specific measures do you plan to implement to help reduce costs for citizens? Can you outline any programs, initiatives, or policies you propose to provide financial relief and improve the overall affordability of living in our town?
Well, I think this is something that everybody worries about, and it's a very hard question to answer. What are we going to do to reduce costs? Well, you know, in a small town, you're dealing with fees for what we have to charge fees for and taxes that we have to pay. We have a constant, increase in our water costs, and that's a real issue for some people, especially those that are on a fixed income. There's not a really good answer to how to decrease those fees, but my goal is to not add anything to the table as much as I can, as much as we can keep it away from the population to where they don't have to pay extra, to where they're not being taxed in a way. I think our property taxes are far too high here. I would like to appeal that in some way to see if we could possibly lower that property tax. I won't make that promise because no person can, but it's something that I would like to look into to make sure that we are in line with the surrounding towns. That's something that I would really like to do as mayor, is to do a study of what people are paying for different things in other towns that surround us and are similar to us, to make sure that we're in line. And if we're not, we need to probably make some sort of adjustments if we can. Sometimes you can't. That's just the truth. As far as increasing anything for people, I don't want to. I don't like fees for anything. I think we have too many fees as it is. So just for the common person trying to live their life, it sometimes gets difficult when you got to pay a fee for this and a fee for that. I have a golf cart and a side-by-side. That's $100, a year you got to pay. And I pay it gladly because that's just part of it. But the thing is I do know how people can get frustrated when every time they turn around, they feel like their water bill's going up, or they're being charged a fee for this or charged a fee for that. And so I understand how that feels. And that seems to be happening all over the country right now.
Okay. Next question. Given the recommendation by an independent firm to raise rates to address the funding shortage, and considering the ongoing increase in water rates that have resulted in some of the highest rates in the region, how do you plan to balance the city's financial needs with the burden on the residents? What alternative solutions or strategies would you propose to address this issue without further increasing rates?
That's again tied to the previous question. With the constant yearly water increase, that really you realize that after a few years your water bill's doubling. After a few years it gets really, really high. And the thing to do about that is to find a place where that might be able to stop. Now, considering the fact that we're going to be putting in millions of dollars in new equipment, we are going to be looking for grants as much as we can, but some of it we're just going to have to be doing on a loan. And something that I'm really interested in investigating is I do not know the structure of the loan that we're going to get. I don't know if it's a simple interest loan or if it's a fixed interest loan. I know it's a low interest loan, but rather than possibly paying one payment a month, maybe we could pay 2 payments a month on our loan, but of a lesser amount that would equal the same. Because if you do that, you can retire a loan quicker and at a much less cost and interest that you can to the population. And so as far as like these increases, I see them there. I'm not gonna lie, I see those increases in the foreseeable future. I think Nathan will also agree with me, there's not much of a way to pay for the structures that we're gonna need in this town without the water bill slightly going up a little bit all the time. And I know that's a real concern for a lot of people. It is for me too. Every time I look at my water bill, I'm like, how are 2 people using this much water? I wonder what on earth are we doing that could be using this much water? And so I understand that. It's really difficult. And so what we have to do is, through years ago, some of this stuff probably should have been addressed a long time ago, and it wasn't, because it's an unpopular thing. Nobody wants to hear, we're gonna increase your water, we're gonna charge you another fee. Nobody wants to hear that. And nobody wants to say that either. But unfortunately, where we are now, we are going to have to fix the structures we have, or we're going to have even more problems. And so it's just where we are. And so my intention is to try to make it as painless as possible and to get it over with as quickly as possible. So that way, hopefully, we can reduce rates in the future.
Okay. Can you outline your strategy for addressing the growing numbers of homeless individuals in our town? What specific measures or programs do you plan to implement to provide support and long-term solutions for those in need?
Well, homelessness is an issue that it's close to my heart because I feel for anybody who doesn't have somewhere to live. And that's just the truth. However, and this may sound a little bit harsh, but homelessness is not something that we should cater to as far as making it a legal thing. Because once you make homelessness legal, you have people that start to come to your town and just start camping out. It's something that we should address with compassion. We should point these people to the resources that they need to get them in a non-homeless state, to get them placed somewhere where they can actually have somewhere to be. We don't want to encourage homelessness by making it something that we accept, because I don't think it's acceptable for anybody to have to be on the street. And I don't want that, especially when it's like it is today, or super cold or even super hot. I've been to big cities, I've been to New York City, and I've seen homeless people all over the place, and obviously Payne is not as big, but I certainly wouldn't want us to have a homeless problem. And I do see we're starting to have a little bit of that, so I think we address that right now. One idea that I have about that, we will try to reach out to government agencies to try to help these folks. And I would love to see Payne itself get an official government agency here in town. You know, almost a lot of people have to go to Taylorville to apply for food stamps and other things like that sometimes. I'd like to see that here, because if you're homeless, you don't really usually have a car, and it's hard to get places. There's organizations here that try to help with that, and thank God for them, but I would like it to be a little bit more accessible. I don't know how we do that, but I think that if we work with local churches and we work with the kind-hearted people that live in this town, we'll find a solution.
Okay. What is your strategy for improving the conditions of the roads in our town? Can you describe the specific actions and timeline you have in mind for addressing the current road issues and ensuring long-term maintenance?
This comes down to funding once again, and we have to look at what roads are used the most, and we have to address those needs first, obviously, because that's where the most traffic is. However, my instructions to our workers would simply be, when you're out and you find something that there's a problem, make a log of it and make sure we know about it so that we can get to it as quickly as possible. I personally, when I'm out driving, I will make a note of where things are if I run into a pothole or I run into something that's causing problems, because we do certainly have some issues. Now, I do think that the state is moving toward trying to fix some of that, but within our own town, we're gonna just have to look at our funding, to look at how we can address those issues in a meaningful and fair way so that we fix some of these problems like cracked sidewalks and cracked roads. As far as a timeline on that goes, it's gonna be based on funding. Everything is. And as far as how we are going to implement that and assure that that's going to happen and maintain it, it's again tied to funding, and it's also tied to how we're actually going to physically take a look at things and prioritize the things that are problematic first, and then move on to the other stuff.
With issues like lead in our drinking water, frequent water line breaks, and deteriorating roads causing significant repair costs for citizens, how do you plan to address these infrastructure challenges? Considering the current state, what steps will you take to both improve our infrastructure and make the town attractive to new businesses and industries?
This is a kind of a multi-phase type question, and it's also tied to the prior question. Basically, what I'm trying to do, what I'm looking to do is, of course, continue with grants. I understand that we recently got a grant. It's going to help us with some of our water issues, and that's a good thing. I want to try to get more of those. We need to throw up as much flack as we can to see what we hit and get as many of those as we can. So it'll be a pretty demanding thing to try to reach out. I've written grants. I understand how it works and how aggravating it can be. So I think that's really the key that we want to do. We also need to talk with people, and I have friends, believe it or not, my roommate in college is a mayor in another town, that I will have a network I'll be able to reach out to, and we'll keep each other apprised of things that come down the pipe that we'll be able to use for the betterment of our own towns and respective towns. His town's much bigger than mine. But the thing about it is, the current state of everything in this town is, it has this older feeling, and it's charming, and it can be. I understand we do have TIF money in our TIF district. We'll be able to address some of the issues there. But when we look at some of the structures uptown, they're kind of in a dire state, and it's going to take probably more than TIF money to fix some of that stuff. I don't know that all of it's fixable, but what we can do is fix the downtown. Even if we had to do it with new structures and put the exterior facade to where it matches our downtown. And then what I would like to do to put Pana on the map is to simply get something that is interesting in our town to people. We used to be called the City of Roses because we had all the greenhouses. I don't know about you, but if there were like as many greenhouses as used to be here, that's something I would drive to see. Now, obviously that time has passed, but we have to focus on something that's going to bring outside interest. I'm a naturalist myself. I like environmental causes and issues, and I'm interested in that kind of stuff. And I don't know exactly what those things might be, but I think if we focus on our city museum that we have, give that a little bit more attention and work with that, it might be something that could attract some outside interest, because there's a lot of positive things in Pana. The bike trail is another good way that we're going to do that. And working with organizations like private citizens, I want to get a panel of private citizens to come in and talk about some things that we can do to improve Pana, much like Pana Pride, and do some of the same things, working with organizations like Pana Pride to just get these things moving and to make it better for everybody.
Okay. Considering that many citizens feel that maintaining a lobbyist is an unnecessary expense for a town our size, how do you justify the continued investment in this role? What benefits do you believe the lobbyist brings to our community, and how do you plan to address the concerns for those who oppose these expenses?
That's a good question, because I've had some of those questions myself. When talking about lobbyists and what we pay to have those lobbyists, it comes down to numbers. It's just like everything else that we do. If you run a city just like you run your house. You have a budget, you try not to go outside of that budget, and you try to do the best that you can to get ahead. So that's what we have to do as a city. If lobbyists bring us more money than they cost us, then that's a very good thing, and we do that. If lobbyists do not bring us more money than they cost us, then that's not a good thing. And how would I prove that? See, this is the issue that I really want to, this is why I've been talking so much about transparency, and I even made statements on Facebook that I wanted to have executive sessions, as many as I could legally in the public, where we vote in the public, because I want the citizens to understand this, so you get rid of questions like this. If you put up, our lobbyists cost this, and these are the grants that they got. They cost us, let's say, $3,000 a month, but they brought in $6,000. And you would reevaluate that every 6 months, you could justify that cost. I absolutely would spend $3,000 of my hard-earned money if it was gaining me $5,000, because that's a net gain of $2,000. So you just do the math, and that's how you justify having a lobbyist or not having a lobbyist. So it's very simple. You just put it out there for people to see. You just have to explain it to people so that they understand it in a meaningful way, and it's not some cloak and dagger thing that people don't know what's going on.
Right. Considering the changes that this area voted for in the previous federal election, how do you plan to implement similar changes within our local government? What specific actions and policies will you prioritize to ensure that the local government reflects the will of the people?
I love this question because it's something that's really close to my heart. As mayor, and I mean this with all sincerity, as mayor, I am a facilitator. The city council, they're elected officials and they represent their particular wards. Their job is to talk to their constituents, see what those folks say, and then bring that to the council meeting. That's how government works. It's not my decision as mayor. It's not my will be done. It's the people's will be done. And those folks have to talk to their representatives of their particular ward and come and tell us what that is. The mayor should simply be a facilitator. Yes, we occasionally have the power to vote if there's a tie or something like that. But for the most part, what we need to do to keep the government in people's hands, in the people of this city's hands, is to allow them to have a voice. And you have a voice by letting your representatives know what you want. And the representatives, if they do it properly, are supposed to listen and then get the feel of the people, what they're thinking, and bring that back. And they should vote accordingly. And that's how you get things done. And I want it to be completely open, transparent. I want to put a suggestion box at Town Hall, at the City Hall there, as to where anybody can come up and put a suggestion. And then once every month or two, I'd like to open those up and look at them. And if there's any good ones in there, which there very likely will be, maybe we can address that. Maybe we can see. Maybe there's a blind spot that we don't know is out there. I want to return the power to the people of the town. It's not about me. It's about helping the people and helping my grandkids and helping my kids that are going to live here after I'm gone. That's what it's about to me, is the future.
What is your strategy for attracting new businesses to our town? Can you outline any specific initiatives, incentives, and partnerships you plan to implement to make our town an appealing destination for businesses and entrepreneurs?
Well, again, like earlier in one of the earlier questions, we were talking about revitalizing downtown. And I think, you do this with incentives, and you do that wisely with incentives, because obviously you want businesses here that ultimately pay taxes to the town, that pay into the town. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that I believe these specialty type shops are the way to really look at things. I don't know that you're going to get something like, a Walmart back, since that's gone, or you're going to get something huge or a large corporation. You might, but we need to be thinking about outside the box a little bit. Like, what can we bring to town that will create not only jobs, but interest? I want people to get in their car in Taylorville and drive to Pana to see something. That's what I want them to do. And now that we've there may be a question about this, but now that we've acquired the theater, I would love to see that developed. Since we have it, we might as well develop it into not only a place for movies, but a place for a live action theater. I believe we need like a little theater in Pana. I'd love to see that done as a music venue. There's a place in Jacksonville called it's called Twisted something, but they have musical performers up there, and they're not like big name performers, but they're big enough to where I think like Webb Wilder was up there, and he has a song that was in Cars, the movie Cars. So kind of that, but it's very intimate. And it's about $20 a ticket, and people come to that, and it's a really good time. Nothing crazy, but I think that we could do a whole lot of cultural things here in Pana. I love the arts, and I enjoy that sort of thing. I think that's very important. I think that might attract some people from the outside. So I'm looking at that kind of stuff. I'm looking at specialties. I'm looking at all sorts of things like that. And so hopefully we can find some interest. I think there is a possibility.
Can you outline your strategy for attracting manufacturing jobs to our town? What specific initiatives and partnerships do you plan to pursue to create favorable environment for manufacturing businesses?
Well, manufacturing businesses are harder to get a commitment from, but it is also very possible. Something that I was thinking about prior to it occurring in Springfield was I had talked with some folks privately, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we somehow got like an Amazon distribution center? Like, that would be fantastic. We could get, but you see, Amazon already just put in a distribution center, I believe, in Springfield. And so we're probably not looking at something like that because they're going to say we're too close. Maybe not, I don't know. But getting on the phone and talking to people, because many big corporations have distribution centers. And so I think that might be something that Pana might actually be in a pretty good location for, because we are kind of surrounded by bigger cities, you know, and just within reasonable driving distance. And we might be able to look at something like that. As far as manufacturing industries, we're just gonna have to look and see what's out there. I teach in Edinburgh, okay? Edinburgh has a little place called Midwest Meter. Pana buys a lot of their equipment from Midwest Meter. It's the second largest meter distribution company in America, as far as I know. It was last time I checked. In little bitty Edinburgh. And they're having, like, a Sloan is putting a big building out there where they're gonna move their equipment there. They're like 1,500 people. We can do that here. We can get that kind of stuff here also. You just have to really work at it, keep your eyes open, and pay close attention to any opportunity that comes across. That's what I want to do. Because you can shoot for the stars, but the problem is, sometimes if you shoot too big, your reach exceeds your grasp a little bit. We're gonna have to start with what we can do as a town and what would actually be attractive to a small town. Something that we want without changing the nature of where we are. I've been in towns that were once small and gotten larger and larger and larger, and they look like this big industrial complex and everyone hates it. I don't want that for Pana, but at the same time, I want progress for Pana in the right way. I'd like to annex in some things that we could annex to allow us to increase our tax base and to help us find room for these new ideas that people may bring to us. You don't know, next week somebody may show up with, hey, I want to open up a manufacturing company, and without knowing those things that are out there, the opportunities that are there, it's a harder question to answer. But I think that if we keep our eyes open and we look in the places that we need to look at, I think we'll be successful. I've seen it happen in small towns.
Since 1985, the promise of providing water to the people of the lake has remained unfulfilled. How do you plan to deliver on this long-standing promise? What specific actions and timeline do you have in mind to ensure the residents of the lake receive the water they've been promised?
Well, this is a tough question. I think about this quite a bit, because imagine being promised something in 1985 and still not having it. I know my wife wouldn't like that, right? I don't think many of us would like that, right? So here's the thing. I know that recently they voted down some money that it was going to cost way more than they wanted it to cost out there. So obviously this has been put off for such a long time that now it's become like even more expensive. It seems like everything is more expensive. There's no happy answer for this. You either have to say, we're not doing it, or you have to say, we're going to do it and just eat the cost. My idea for this, and I don't know if this is doable, but it might be. My parents lived out toward the lake. My mom and dad, they were in a position in life where they had a well and it kept going dry and dad was filling it up. They went ahead and they paid out of their own pocket to have water run to their home. It cost thousands of dollars. It was really a big expense, but it was worth it to them because dad didn't feel like, filling up the well all the time. And I'm sure there are people out there that are dealing with the same kind of thing. And so my suggestion would, and it's not a fair suggestion, it's very uncomfortable, would be to try to do it in phases, where maybe we don't get everybody, but we go so far. And then we try and find some more money and we go, so rather than trying to fund it all at once, we go so far. And then when we get more money, we go even further. Because, and that sounds awful, especially if you're that last house and then you're not the next house. That sounds awful, but would you rather do something or would you rather do nothing? And I'd rather do something. So that's how I feel about that.
Considering the 6% yearly increase in our water bills, do you have any plans to address this issue? What measures would you take to potentially lower and eliminate these rate increases while ensuring the financial stability of the city's water services?
Well, we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, and I'm not going to paint this in a positive light falsely, because I'll be honest with you. This is a real issue, because we have to have all the stuff that we have to have, and we have to pay for it. And guess where that money comes from? It comes out of your wallet, and it comes out of my wallet. And unfortunately, that seems to be the way it is. However, I have always felt like that a 6% yearly increase was kind of high. The first thing I want to do, and I don't know the answers to this, the first thing I want to do is look at all the surrounding areas and see how much their water is increasing and see where we are. What does Taylorville do? What does Shelbyville do? What do all of these other areas do? How much do they increase? How much can we get away with that is the minimum amount, but yet still make our budget? What do we do there? Then I want to make sure that we're addressing any kind of old issues, which I think we're going to be doing with some of this new equipment coming in. Because, old stuff has a tendency to be less efficient. If we make it new and we work with it again, some issues need to be addressed there. That might help cut costs. I also want people to understand that if they're having trouble with their water bill, that we want to help them run down what the issue is. It could be that they're using too much water, but it could be they have a leak they don't know about. And I know everybody hates to hear, well, you probably got a leaky toilet. People don't like to hear that because they think, well, my toilet's not leaking, I've done all these tests. But I would like to, create a way that those of us that, we used to have individuals that would go around and check the meters by, in person, and now we kind of drive it and check it. But if there's a person having issues, who's to say that we can't some way, after they've done a lot of checking themselves, maybe try to help them run that down. If there is an issue, maybe find it. As far as decreasing anything, I don't see this decreasing because of the mess that we have got ourselves into based on past years. And every mayor, whether it's Nathan or myself or the people that come 5 years after me, 10 years after me, every one of us has had to deal with this mess. And there's just not a good answer because you have to have the funding in order to fix the problem. And so here we are. And we're just going to try to make it hurt as little as possible. And I know that everybody feels that way. It affects everybody that lives in town. And there's some people that are really struggling to try to deal with that because it's a huge increase every year. And I hate it, but it's tough to deal with. So we'll look into every avenue that we can to try to keep it or lower it or make it better. And so that's all I can promise. And that's the truth.
Can you share some specific initiatives or projects you have undertaken to improve our community? What tangible results have these efforts achieved, and how do you plan to build on them in the future?
Well, I can tell you this, your community starts with your own place. So I keep my yard, I think, pretty nice. I also mow the boulevard across the street, way up. The city doesn't have to come down and mow it. I try to take care of it and keep it safe. So I try to help there. The best thing we can also do is help our neighbors. If when we had this terrible windstorm where all the stuff was blown down everywhere, everybody was trying to help everybody. And that's what makes this town such a special place, is because we were trying to help and do that. But as far as what I've done, I actually went and I've talked to some people about some prospects that we could possibly do to make things better. I can't really talk about all of them because they asked me not to use that as a campaign, and I said that I wouldn't. But let's just say that there's some things that I have in mind that I think might really surprise some people with the benefits that we can have. I want to be actively involved with organizations like Painted Pride. I was able to be fortunate enough to hand out some candy canes. I had on my red coat and a hat, and one of the kids called me Santa. I don't know what that says about me, but it was a good time. We really enjoyed that. I want to not only address our largest park, but I'd like to address our other parks as well, to try to make those as nice as we can for the folks that live near them. I just think beautifying things, I think working with citizen groups, which I would like to start. And I talked to my wife about this, and I said, what I'd really like to do, I was inspired by a Facebook post excuse me. I was inspired by a Facebook post where an individual was asking for help with their snow removal. And I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if there was an organization in town, talk all day and talk all evening is rough on you, an organization in town where we could get together and go help people who couldn't afford to have that. So that's an initiative I would like to start. I don't know that would be directly tied to the city, or it would just be an act of goodwill among the people of the town. And I'm interested in things like that. It's a job about service, and if you go into this kind of thing, anybody that goes into any kind of politics, I'm not a politician, but I am a human being, and I realize that people need things. When you go into any kind of job, and if you look at it as an act of service, you do it with a different heart than if you look at it as something different. And that's the way I see this. So as far as what I'm going to do and what I have done is be good to your neighbor. I think that's one of the best things that we can do, all of us, is be good to your neighbor and try to help bring as much positive we can. I'm an active bird watcher, and I like things like that, and I like natural history, and I like butterflies, and I like movies, and I like the arts, and I like all of this stuff. I love the ideas of festivals to bring the community together, arts and craft shows. I think a lot of things can be done to make this place even more attractive than it is.
Considering Iowa's success in saving $2.17 million through its government efficiency program, what do you think about Pana implementing similar initiatives to achieve comparable results?
Well, I think anything we can do to make our government run more efficient is a great idea. One thing that I want to do is to look at all of our expenditures in a meaningful way, not just kind of in a little spreadsheet. I want our council, our city council, to know what we're spending money on, why we're spending it, and to understand it in a meaningful way. I've seen what the budgets look like, and sometimes you're going, well, what is this for? I don't entirely know what this is. I want to break that down to where that they know what's going on, so that we can look and make sure that we're not spending money that we don't need to spend. I think just taking, honestly, a forensic audit or a deep look at everything that we do, I think it would be very beneficial to the city, because you always have waste of some kind. I mean, it doesn't matter where you work. If you work in a factory, there's probably waste there. If you work in a school, there's probably some wasteful spending there. In a city, there's probably some wasteful spending. And we don't have any money to waste. So I think that tracking any of that down is a great idea. I have no problem with that. And I think that should be a priority.
And final question, well, that was quicker than I thought. How do you believe elected or appointed positions such as the city treasurer impact the community? And which approach do you think would be more beneficial for our city's needs?
If I'm understanding this question right, it's like, what do I think about elected versus appointed positions, basically?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that everybody that works up at City Hall right now, I think they're all trying to do a good job. All right. However, my stance has always been, if something originally started as an elected position, I think it should stay an elected position. That's not what everybody thinks, and that's okay. But the reason I think that is I've always felt like it was a bad idea to take the power away from the people. I think that when you take the power away from the citizens, it invites problems. I think that we all have to be checked and balanced, and I think that anytime you remove that power from the people, that you're asking for trouble. And so I'm not for ever doing that for anything, but that's just how I feel, because I feel like it takes away some measure of your own ability to decide for yourself, and I think that's really what's America's about, being able to have your opinion, to have it heard. So that's how I feel about that.
Okay. Thank you guys very much for joining and listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed this wonderful interview.
All right, thank you.